Jennifer Zacconi was a 22-year-old girl, very cheerful and positive. She had lived her entire life in the small town of Martellago, Venice, Italy, with a population of about 20,000 people. Like most similar provinces, there were few places for cultural leisure, so meeting any acquaintance usually meant going to a bar or club. In this case, such a place was located in the city center, where Jennifer lived. The girl periodically visited this club, where she often saw its owner and bartender at the same time. The man's name was Lucio Niero. He immediately caught Jennifer's attention with his charisma and smile. Later, the heroine of the story admitted that he didn't seem particularly to her, but she felt a certain magnetism in him. All of this happened despite the large age difference of 12 years. At that time, the girl was only 20 years old, and the man was already 32. One evening, they met, exchanged jokes, compliments, and then flirted a bit. It seemed they were on the same wavelength and liked each other. There was just one problem by that point. Lucio was a married man with two children whom he loved very much. They talked all evening. The man constantly complained about his wife as if he could barely hold back his emotions while talking about his unhappy marriage. Lucio was extremely dissatisfied with his relationship with his wife, even suspecting her of infidelity. The story sounded very plausible, and most importantly, Jennifer was moved by it. Now, the naive girl found herself trapped, intrigued, and hooked by pleasant conversation. Perhaps she was also attracted to Lucio's wealth and maturity. She saw him as a potential partner to build a family with. After this meeting at the bar, they went on a date. Jennifer was confident that her relationship with Lucio was developing, and she believed that he was truly suffering in his marriage and wanted to leave his despised wife for her. This continued for about a year. Suddenly, Jennifer found out that she was pregnant. During this period, she had no relationship with anyone other than Lucio. The girl knew that the child was his. During their next date, Jennifer shared the happy news with her older boyfriend, or so she thought. However, to her surprise, the man's reaction was completely the opposite of what she expected. He literally got angry and demanded that she have an abortion. Jennifer had never seen him in such a state before, and she was genuinely scared. Lucio Niero explained that he didn't want to have children on the side until he was divorced. Finally, Jennifer suspected that he had been lying to her all this time. It was easy to crack the bartender's story. His relationship with his wife wasn't as bad as he had claimed. The man had never intended to leave her from the start. He viewed Jennifer as a plaything, a mistress, and a way to relax. It became clear that he had no intention of moving toward a relationship with Jennifer and planned to stay with his wife. The girl felt deceived and betrayed. She wasn't planning to terminate the pregnancy. She openly told her lover about it. Lucio exploded again. He insisted that it was his child and that he also had the right to decide whether it should be born. He demanded that she get rid of it so that he wouldn't face problems in his official marriage. In the end, they fought and simply parted ways. Jennifer refused to give in. Despite the misunderstanding, she still held on to hope that Lucio would leave his wife and come to her, as she was ready to build a relationship with him. However, the more time passed, the more it seemed that the situation was only making Lucio more irritated. He persistently demanded an abortion, often snapping at her and yelling at his mistress over the phone. But Jennifer remained steadfast. She even started preparing a nursery for the future baby. She bought clothes, a stroller, a crib. Her life was about to change significantly. The expectant mother gradually bought everything necessary, hoping to be ready before the baby arrived. The girl found out she was having a boy and decided to name him Hivan. Lucio gradually stopped contacting her and just withdrew. Jennifer decided that he needed some time to think things through. She was confident that he would change his attitude and accept the child despite his initial negativity. She didn't want to bother her boyfriend and hoped that he would finally leave his wife and they would soon become a full-fledged couple. In this state, more than 4 months passed. During this time, there were only a few brief conversations between them. According to predictions, there was no more than a week left before the baby's birth when the man started asking for a meeting. After talking, he invited Jennifer to a kind of date where they could discuss their relationship. Unlike all the previous exchanges and dialogues that had gone on for almost 6 months, this time Lucio was calm, even seemed kind. Jennifer immediately told her mother about everything. Her mother was very happy and believed that the man had finally decided to choose her and the child and wanted to share this with them at the meeting. In Jennifer's mother's eyes, Lucio had always been a mature and experienced man, a reasonable and sensible person. She understood his situation in his marriage and believed that he really could build a happy family with her daughter. The woman saw his invitation for a meeting as a good sign and was genuinely happy for her daughter. Jennifer agreed to the meeting, which was scheduled for the evening of April 29, 2006. When they called before that, Jennifer was thrilled. Lucio told her on the phone that he had really changed his mind, wanted to be part of her life and raise Havan, but they still needed to discuss something. It seemed strange that he suggested meeting not at her house or a hotel, but invited her for a walk in a park located a couple of kilometers from her home. Jennifer didn't change the meeting location or try to convince him to go somewhere else. She decided that she was ready to hear her lover's life-changing proposal, no matter where it was. Jennifer had told her mother about the meeting place. The woman reacted calmly to the idea, even though Jennifer was in the 9th month of pregnancy at that point. The girl clearly didn't plan to be away for long. She took her ID, 10 euros, and a small bag of candies with her. Jennifer headed to the parking lot where she was supposed to meet the man. As she approached, Lucio got out of an unfamiliar car. Until that moment, she had yet never seen him in that car, but she didn't think much of it. The man greeted her with a friendly smile, and Jennifer returned the smile. He kindly suggested they go for ice cream. The nearest shop was a kilometer away. Jennifer enthusiastically accepted the offer, but at that time, she didn't know that she would never make it to that shop. That evening, she never returned home. Several hours later, Jennifer's family was at home. Her mother was still waiting for her daughter to return, as she was sure Jennifer had just stepped out for a while. When Jennifer hadn't returned by midnight, the woman became very worried. Around that time, Lucio was returning home. He called the woman and asked if Jennifer had made it back, asking to speak to her. The mother replied that her daughter wasn't home and she was supposed to be with him at that time. Lucio, sounding frightened, claimed that they had parted ways a long time ago. Lucio said he had dropped Jennifer off near a 24-hour store and then left. After that, he told her that he couldn't help and promised to call later, then just hung up. The terrified woman began calling all of her daughter's friends and acquaintances, hoping she was with one of them, but no one had seen her. She was about to contact the police, fearing that her daughter might have been in an accident or fallen victim to some kind of hooligan attack. Suddenly, Jennifer's mother received a message from her daughter's phone number. Jennifer claimed she was fine, told her not to worry, and explained that she had gone with a friend to a casino in Slovenia. Despite it being in another country, it was about a 3-hour drive away. The woman tried to call her daughter back, but couldn't get through. She suspected the message hadn't come from her daughter. The tone of the message wasn't like Jennifer's at all. The story didn't make sense. Traveling to another country with only 10 euros in her pocket, without any belongings for herself or for the baby she was about to have. Not only did this seem out of character for Jennifer, but it also didn't make sense for any expecting mother who would be preparing for childbirth. Moreover, the status of her documents rendered the whole story even more implausible. It was clear she wouldn't be able to enter a casino in another country with expired documents. The woman quickly realized that this message made no sense. Jennifer couldn't have gone anywhere with such a lack of resources or preparations. Comparing all these contradictory facts, Jennifer's mother was horrified by the realization that something terrible had happened. She feared that Lucio, who had been the last to see her daughter before her disappearance, might be involved. The possibility of kidnapping crossed her mind, but she had no idea of the true scale of the tragedy. Anxious and fearful, the mother contacted the police. She carefully described everything about the events, including the inconsistencies in Lucio Niero's story. His behavior and what he had said raised suspicions with the authorities. Jennifer was declared missing and search efforts were launched. Her family reached out to the media to engage the public and gather information from potential witnesses. There were no ransom demands, and the kidnapping theory began to seem doubtful. The fate of the pregnant woman remained unknown for some time. The only thing the police could do at that point was to keep the main suspect under surveillance. It was believed that he knew what had happened to the missing woman and where to find her. The Carabinieri repeatedly spoke with Lucio, who cooperated with the police, though not particularly enthusiastically, but he answered all the questions. He admitted that he was concerned about Jennifer's disappearance and didn't deny that they had been in a relationship. According to him, he had been waiting for her return, worried, and also spent several hours each day searching for her and posting missing person flyers. Lucio even suggested his own theory to the detectives, claiming that gypsies might have kidnapped Jennifer for the baby. However, all of this was unfounded, just like any of his other assumptions. Lucio realized that no one believed him. The detectives intended to dig deeper and find out the truth. Nevertheless, at this stage, they simply let him go and continued surveillance on the suspect. A week passed, and nothing valuable was discovered. Suddenly, Lucio disappeared. He was actively searched for. The man's behavior seemed very suspicious. Another week passed. Finally, the fugitive made contact with his wife. By that time, they were still together, but she was planning to divorce him due to his infidelity when she learned about the disappearance of her husband's lover. The family's landline was being tapped. This allowed them to track the criminal. The man was in Milan. Even at that point, the fate of the story's heroine remained a mystery, but judging by the time during which she hadn't shown any activity, she was no longer expected to be found alive. Lucio, 34, was tracked down and arrested on May 7, 2006. He immediately began denying any involvement in the girl's disappearance. He insisted that he loved her and even seriously considered leaving his wife and going to the young lover. But all of this sounded unconvincing. Under pressure from the authorities, he began changing his story. Now, the man admitted that his relationship with the young girl had been solely motivated by sex from the start, and he had never intended to divorce his wife for the lover. These changes in his views seemed very troubling. He clearly wanted to hide something, but simply couldn't confuse the investigators. Lucio stated that the girl never showed up for their meeting on that fateful evening and that he hadn't seen her. Meanwhile, the police had already checked the girl's mobile phone data. They discovered that the last time the device was pinged was near a gas station located about a kilometer from Jennifer's home. When inspecting the area, they found a rope with bloodstains, which looked very suspicious. It was sent to the laboratory for testing, and it later confirmed the presence of Jennifer's DNA. The rope was presumably the murder weapon. However, the body could not be found. Surveillance footage from the gas station was requested and thoroughly analyzed. It showed compromising evidence against Lucio Cadre. The video revealed how the man attacked the defenseless girl, who tried to escape from him but couldn't. However, it remained unclear where the deceased's body was. This could only be determined after the man made a confession. Apparently, he never intended to organize an engagement, divorce his wife, or leave his children. All of this was used to keep the young lover close to him for as long as possible. Neither the missing girl's mother nor the girl herself suspected his lies for a long time. He seemed very sincere and maintained relationships with the family for almost a year and a half. Jennifer often visited him, and he frequently visited the heroine's house, where she lived with her parents. It seemed strange that a man who was officially married and had no intention of ending his marriage was so deeply involved in the image of a free man that he even became a regular visitor around his lover's family. Then Lucio admitted that he never planned to have children with Jennifer from the start. This came as a real blow to him. He feared destroying his marriage and didn't want to ruin his relationship with his children, of whom he had 2 at the time. The suspect confessed that he had demanded his lover undergo an abortion. It seems strange that he chose such a cruel way to avoid breaking up with his wife. The loss of the ability to see his growing children, not wanting to pay child support, but having committed a crime and now being in custody, he essentially brought all of this upon himself. Lucio stated that he found himself in complete confusion, literally feeling like a victim, cornered, and becoming paranoid. He felt that his wife was about to uncover his affair, and his whole well established life would be destroyed. He would have to start over, but only after a long and troublesome divorce process. Realizing that he wouldn't be able to convince Jennifer to get rid of the child, he came to the conclusion that the only way to get what he wanted was murder. The route with secluded spots and the late dark hours for their meeting were chosen deliberately. Lucio told his lover that he really didn't plan to restore their relationship and didn't want the child to be born. He again demanded that she have an abortion, giving her a chance to save her life. This was despite the fact that the girl was 9 months pregnant, as if the man didn't realize that this was physically impossible. At that moment, Jennifer began to understand that her dreams of a happy family life with this man were falling apart. She simply asked why he was so insistent that the child shouldn't be born. She tried to understand, wondering if perhaps he didn't want to pay child support, but Lucio continued to avoid answering. During the discussion of personal matters, the couple arrived at the gas station. When Lucio's car stopped, the tension in the car's interior significantly increased. They continued to argue. The man started to act more aggressively. At first, he raised his voice, and then, to her surprise, he started using physical force. For Jennifer, this was a real shock, as she had never encountered such behavior before. Moreover, she was worried about the health of the child as she was 9 months pregnant. The girl was pregnant, and due to her petite frame, it made her movements slower. Despite this, she managed to escape the car. She tried to run toward her home, but it was quite a distance away. Unfortunately, Jennifer had difficulty moving quickly and fell several times. Lucio exited the car, followed her, and quickly approached. She attempted to hide behind a gas station where there were some bushes, but she wasn't fast enough. Lucio caught up with her, and after a brief struggle, he caused her to fall to the ground. He struck her a few times and then pushed her. Despite her efforts, he continued, using force to restrain her. After a while, Jennifer stopped fighting back, and Lucio realized he could not continue. He noticed a nearby hole and dragged her towards it, laying her face down. He spent a few moments there before returning to his car to retrieve a shovel and began covering the hole with dirt. Afterward, he left the scene. Lucio later made a call to Jennifer's mother, telling her that they had ended their relationship and sent messages from her phone to make it seem convincing. This delay gave him more time to prevent the search, but Jennifer's family began to suspect something was wrong and contacted the authorities. Lucio eventually led the police to the area where he had hidden her. Jennifer's body, along with her unborn child, was found and examined. The cause of death was determined to be suffocation, as the earth obstructed her breathing. There were marks from a rope around her neck. Lucio admitted that in his state of distress, he had made poor decisions and wasn't thinking clearly. The psychiatric examination showed that he was sane, but he continued to insist that he was in a state of affect in order to mitigate his guilt. However, his versions of events were too inconsistent to be trusted. The suspect demonstrated cruelty, but even then, the coroner stated that Jennifer and her child could have survived if they had received medical assistance in time. The motive for the attack also remained unclear. Lucio had pursued Jennifer with great enthusiasm when he met her at his bar, and they had been seeing each other for over a year. The criminal wasn't foolish, so his desire to get rid of his mistress and child by any means seemed absurd. He had to have known that murder would bring even more problems. He insisted on his final version of the story, believing that the police would not be able to solve the crime and that he would get away with it. This, despite the fact that he had lured the girl to the meeting and all the evidence pointed to him. Jennifer's relatives were shocked by what had happened. They had hoped and believed until the last moment that the pregnant girl would safely return home. The family was also outraged by the complete lack of media coverage about the murder of the unborn child. The Zaccuni family seriously feared that Lucio might avoid punishment for this crime altogether and would only be convicted for Jennifer's murder, even though he faced a life sentence. The relatives were forced to take extreme measures, so they published photographs of babies in funeral clothes in the local newspaper. This looked disturbing and sparked a wave of criticism from the public, but the family insisted that they saw no other way to draw attention to the issue. This was about a child who was about to be born. He was already a fully formed human being, and therefore, Lucio should also be held accountable for his murder. The trial began in 2008. Lucio was held in custody. The prosecution managed to reconstruct the events in detail, taking into account the evidence found and the confessions of the criminal himself. There could be no doubt about Lucio's guilt. What was more concerning was the lenient attitude the system showed towards the defendant. By this time, the accused had already divorced his wife, who wanted nothing to do with the murderer. She later succeeded in obtaining a complete ban on communication with the father, at least until the child reached adulthood. Then, for some reason, the court decided that Lucio's actions were unintentional. It was agreed that the defendant simply wanted to hide the fact of his mistress's pregnancy from his wife, forced her to have an abortion, and hoped until the last moment that it would be successful. He supposedly didn't want to kill her. She was buried out of fear of being exposed. Why this became a mitigating circumstance remained a mystery. This was shocking to the Zaccuni family, who were convinced that Lucio had planned everything and intentionally lured the girl into a trap. He understood that terminating a pregnancy just days before birth was impossible, which meant he had originally planned to kill her. Additionally, the defendant showed no remorse. He claimed that he had suffered some kind of mental breakdown at that moment and simply did not realize what he was doing. He never apologized to Jennifer's parents. In the end, for his crimes, he was sentenced to only 30 years in prison. Against this background, the mother and father of the deceased were beside themselves with anger. They tried to have the court's decision reviewed so that the man would be locked away for the rest of his life. This worked. In 2009, a new hearing took place, but the outcome disappointed everyone. The verdict was confirmed and remained in force. The criminal stayed behind bars to serve his 30-year sentence. Even more shocking to the deceased's family was that they were right about the unborn child. The murder of the baby was not even considered in the case. According to doctors, the child was expected to be born about 3 to 4 days after the attack, but therein lay the issue. Until the child was born, he was simply not considered a person. Although the baby was fully formed and all the examinations showed that he could have survived if born, Lucio was only charged with illegal abortion, not murder. By the court's decision, Lucio was also required to pay the victim's family a compensation of 80,000 euros. But even before the end of the first trial, the man declared himself bankrupt on the advice of his lawyer. The defense attorney knew that much depended on bureaucracy and suggested acting proactively. The Zaccuni family received not a single cent, so they decided to demand compensation from the state. They tried until 2017, when the Rome Court of Appeals finally ruled that they had no right to any payments. There was a lot of negative sentiment towards the country's justice system, but it didn't help the case. Even this absurdity did not end there. According to Italian law, after 10 years of imprisonment, a convict may be allowed to work outside of prison during the day and spend 45 days a year at home. This also happened in Lucio's case. After 11 years of imprisonment, in 2017, the man was granted the right to be released. Now he had the opportunity to be free, spend time with his family, and then return to prison. The Zaccuni family was outraged by such injustice. All of this became possible because during these 11 years, Lucio demonstrated exemplary behavior behind bars. He insisted that he had reformed and deserved this small break. In addition to his exemplary behavior, the man had to undergo a special psychiatric evaluation to confirm that he was safe and could indeed be released. He passed all the tests without problems, even though everyone remembered how he had once tried to claim insanity. This caused a great deal of negativity from the victim's parents. The mother and father found it incomprehensible that the court had ruled the murder of the unborn child as an abortion. Now they were witnessing with their own eyes how the criminal who had brutally tortured their daughter and buried the pregnant woman alive in the dirt was walking free, laughing with his family. Lucio's behavior made it clear that he clearly felt no remorse or regret. Jennifer's parents repeatedly stated that Lucio had no right to walk freely on the earth, but nothing changed. If you liked my work, please subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. Let's discuss this story in the comments. Thank you all, and goodbye.